over at BangTheBook.com. Daily college basketball picks from Kyle Hunter. That article should be posted here around lunchtime today. Parker Michaels has already put up his NHL article with a very limited number of games tonight, so you can check that out over there as well. All 4 of these NFL Divisional Round playoff games have been previewed. The golf tournament this weekend has been previewed. We've got daily college basketball and NBA content. And, of course, I'm working hard now on my Major League Baseball stuff. So lots going on over at BangTheBook.com. Make sure you check it out. Get involved in our free pick contests to win some cash prizes. Check out our sportsbook reviews as well. And as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is the promo code. 100% deposit match bonus up to $500 for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus up to $500 for the live casino. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. 2 guests on the program here today. We'll kick things off with our leadoff hitter. That is Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
Everything's going great. Baseball season wins out now, and you just never get ahead in this industry.
No, you really can't. And it's crazy. I mean, we know that these seasons are 365 days for these teams because of transactions and the off season and signing guys and all that type of stuff. But damn it, man, all these sports are 365 days a year in the sports betting industry now too.
It definitely is, and I started working on baseball a couple days ago, figuring I'd get a head start, and all of a sudden Caesars puts out season wins. So, yeah, we'll have to deal with it as we go, and we'll see if anybody copies or if there's any changes from that. But it's actually good to get out early because it gets people excited about baseball. And as you know, I travel to spring training every year, and that's 2 months away. So, now that college football has ended, we get to the end of the NFL, and we can spend more time with the other sports. And, it's a never-ending grind when you're betting for a living.
Well, and that's a very cruel twist of fate. I was talking about this with you before the show. Living here in the Cleveland area, it's January. We expect cold, we expect snow, we expect miserable. Yesterday, thunderstorms, tornadoes, 60 degrees, felt like a springtime kind of day. These MLB season win total odds come out. I start thinking spring. I'm digging into baseball quite a bit now as well. Then today it's snowing. So, it's crazy to think that, it's the middle of not even the middle of January, and MLB season win total odds are out already. Credit to Jeff Davis and Matt Lindemann over at Caesars for putting those out, but just it is insane to me how much earlier and earlier these seasons begin for us.
Well, from the sports betting standpoint, from the sports books, they're just trying to get some publicity. And if you can beat the next person to getting the lines out, I know the Golden Nugget got a lot of publicity a few years ago for putting those out earlier, and then all of a sudden Chris Andrews gets a job over at South Point, and then South Point did their best to get in front of that. And Matt's, we both know Matt, you're friends with Matt, and that's a guy he's a go-getter, and he started at Caesars, and there's been a few things he's done that have been ahead of the curve, and he's been pretty innovative. I've been very happy for him. It's nice to see a good guy going out there and making a name for himself, and now we just got to go in there and try to beat him on it.
Yeah, and, like I said, we'll do some more baseball stuff here as we get closer. I know I had some people reaching out on Twitter yesterday and asking when I'm going to start with the baseball. The Bettor's Box podcast, the standalone MLB podcast that I do twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays, that'll start here in the month of April. But obviously we'll try to work in as much baseball as we can as we get closer to the season here. But speaking of seasons and them starting, we had one wrap up on Monday night with college football coming to a close. Clemson blowing out Alabama in the national championship game. Bryan, I ask all of my guests this, so I want to ask you this here on today's show. Looking back at your college football season, what do you feel like was really successful for you? What do you feel like you did a very good job of this year?
I didn't have a good college football season. I actually lost money this college football season, and that's the first time I can remember that. Usually that's one of the highlights of my year is college football. So I don't know if I have an answer for that because I've been very disappointed. I didn't pull the trigger on a lot of games. I like Clemson, but I wanted to stick, so I didn't play it. The bowl season was very good, so usually I don't do very well in the bowls. So hopefully that's turning into something that I can build on for next year. But basically, it was just a situation where I just couldn't get my hold on the teams, and a lot of it had to do with the MAC. Usually I tear up the MAC, but I lost in the MAC this year, which is just mind blowing for me. So when you can't win in your best conference, you're not going to have a good football season, and so I got to go back and do some more work. What I did go back and do after the season was go back and make game grades for every game. So I've noticed if a team wins on the game grade and they looked bad with the final score, the following week there was a team that would have some value on it. So I went back and I back tested that, and that worked out really well this year. So that's something I'm going to keep in mind next year, and obviously go off less of the final score and check into more of the turnovers. And it was one of those years where turnovers usually balance out a little bit, but it seemed like every team I bet on had the worst turnover day, and those things are going to happen. Anytime you're betting and the team turns the ball over, you're not going to have a very good chance of winning. And since I play a lot of underdogs, usually I lose the turnover battle, but even the favorites this year, that didn't work out for me. So it's a learning experience. I've tried to make some adjustments already, and I'll do more as the year approaches. But I'm looking to get a big head start on college football next year because of what happened this year.
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit already, because the follow-up question, the obvious follow-up question is, what are you going to look to incorporate? What are you going to look to do a little bit more the next season? But I want to ask you about something different here. You mentioned that you liked Clemson in the national championship game, wanted to get a 6, never popped up, so you never wound up playing the game. I have to ask, and this is a very deep and detailed discussion. This is something we would probably need an entire segment on, so maybe that's something we can do either later here in the spring or sometime over the off season. But do you feel like sometimes people can get too numbers obsessed? I mean, obviously you want to get the best number that you possibly can, but when you look overall at the grand scheme of things, the percentage of times that the number actually matters in terms of the underdog covering but not winning the game outright, or the favorite winning and not covering, something like that, is pretty small overall. Now, I do like to say on this show that the number doesn't matter until it does, which is kind of the way that I sort of operate, because you're going to have times where you get middle on a game or get a bad number or something like that. But do you feel like maybe you are a little bit too focused on getting the best number at times?
I would say yes. Early in the week, for example, if there's a game that came out Sunday and I missed the line, I could have gotten a +10, and now I'm seeing an 8 out there, it does have an effect on me that I could have had the 10. Now I'm looking to play an 8. Obviously, 10 works out a little bit better, and the percentages are a little bit better. But it is a little frustrating that I'm missing numbers. But I think unless you place a hard cap on whatever number you're willing to take, you're going to start taking a bunch of games that are borderline profitable. And to me, that game was sitting at 8.5, 7.5 earlier from these people that put out games there and that kind of thing. And then it was down at 5.5, and I said, you know what? I said, that's not what I want here. And to be totally honest with you, since I sell plays, I don't want people thinking just because it's a national championship game, I'm going to force a play. I put out the same games to my clients as I bet. I bet a few more just because I don't have the time to do all the write-ups for them. But if your guy is putting out a play, if you're following somebody, they're putting out a play on every single playoff game, every single bowl game, chances are they're not looking to make money for you. They're looking for sales, and I don't want to be that guy. So I have to have a set number that I make, and I'll say, okay, based on this information, I need to have the 6. Obviously, they have some guys suspended, especially the linemen. Now that probably was worth a point, but it was something that I really didn't have a big feel on the game, because as we've talked about all season long, I had Alabama rated as the highest rated team in my power ratings all season long. And now they played one bad game, and they're going to be discounted next year. In fact, going into the championship game, there was lines out on who would win the championship next year, and Alabama was the favorite. And Clemson wins this game, and now all of a sudden Clemson is the favorite. Clemson did look very good in that game. I've watched every Clemson game all season long. That was the best they played all season. Alabama, to be honest, had some bad coaching in that game. I couldn't understand some of the coaching moves. You're running the ball right down their throat all game. You're tiring them out, and you just got away from it. And, you know, he tried to be too smart by passing when Alabama's the team that runs the ball down your throat, and they were having success. So, you know, a lot of people are going to discount Alabama based on what they saw last. And who knows, for one time, maybe starting the next year, we might get some value on Alabama.
All right, so let's transition into these NFL games here for the divisional round. We'll start with the first game on the board, 301-302, Indianapolis, Kansas City. Kansas City up from 4 to 5.5. And this is sort of what I was getting at with my question here, Brian, is, you know, that 4 number that was out there early in the week was gone very, very quickly. You know, and it wasn't available at all shops anyway. It was available at Bookmaker, and it moved very quickly to 4.5 and then on up into 5 and that type of thing. But I feel like there's kind of a little bit of paralysis there in terms of seeing that the opener was 4, now seeing that it's 5.5, and maybe this one gets to 6. It already has gotten to 6. It's come back down a little bit more. But I think there's this paralysis out there from a lot of people to say, well, I didn't get -4. I'm not going to play -5.5, even though I do like Kansas City in this game. I think some people do kind of scare themselves off of numbers a little bit, you know, because they see what an opener was or what an early line was, when the reality is, and the fact of the matter is, very few people got that 4.
Yeah, definitely. And 4.5, 5, 5.5 are all dead numbers. So it's not as much of a worry. I agree. I think we do hit 6 again on this. So if you like Indy, you'll see that again. And the reason I say that is we've got a Kansas City team who had the week off. We all know Andy Reid is terrific having a week off. We've got a rested Kansas City team, and usually a team coming off of a bye is worth a couple of points. You've got Kansas City having one of the 2 best home field advantages. And you've got an Indianapolis team right now who is red hot, and the public likes to bet the teams that are red hot. And to be honest with you, the underdogs, I think, have hit like 14 out of 15 in the NFL playoffs going back to last year. So there's a lot of reasons why people like the underdogs here, because they're on a roll. But everything is totally a different game. I discount that situation. To me, I've always liked to play the favorites in week 2 because, number one, they're the better team. They've got the extra week off, and the other team had to play the following week and got banged up. So my first look at all these games is I'm looking to fade the current narrative of the underdogs because the underdogs have been hot. And I think, you know, overall, you're getting some pretty cheap numbers on the favorite when you actually break down the game from a power rating standpoint and from the buy standpoint and also the standpoint of playing at home. New Orleans has got a terrific home field advantage. New England at this time of year is very tough to beat. I don't know the exact number, but New England in the playoffs playing at home has just been tremendous. Obviously, they don't have quite the team they've had in the past. The Rams may be the one team where you look at it and you say, you know what, I think that team could be beat. Kansas City, you know, people have looked at this Indy-Kansas City game, and they all talk about how good Indy's defense has been. Well, you go back to the first 6 games, 5-6 games of the season when they were really injured, they were bad. But once they got all their guys back, they had a really good defense. But go back and look at the strength of schedule they played against opposing offenses. They played the easiest slate of offenses all season long. They end the year playing Tennessee with a backup quarterback. Last week they played Houston without 2 of their best receivers. They've been very lucky when it's come to that defense, and which is one of the reasons why I'm leaning with the over here. We're seeing 57s pretty much across the board. Kansas City is going to move the ball on this Indy defense. You're not going to see the same Indy defense that you saw the last 2 weeks against faulty offenses. This Kansas City team can put points on the board against anybody. This is going to be a track meet, and 57, I think, at this point is a little bit cheap.
Well, one of the things I talked about last week with Brad Powers was, you know, looking at that Indianapolis-Houston game, Yeah, Indianapolis wound up closing a 1-point dog or, in that range, but that was a number of 3 at open. And with Indianapolis having 1-9, being so hot with Andrew Luck, the defense, a young defense, really improving throughout the season, that opening number was still 3. And the market moved it down, and correctly, obviously, with the way that the game played out. But then you look at this one here, you notice Indianapolis, who opened a 3-point dog on the road at Houston, only opens a 4-point dog in Kansas City here. So it seemed like last week, maybe there wasn't as much respect for the Colts in that opening number. This week, there was too much respect for the Colts on that opening number. And again, when it comes to this business, you want to treat these teams as stocks. You want to buy low and sell high. And judging by the 2 openers for the Colts games here in the playoffs, fading the Colts this week is selling high. And I think that's why we've seen this line move the way it has.
Yeah, and the 3 last week with Houston, I give the lines makers a lot of credit, but that was a bad line. There's no way. You knew that Indy was a team that was going to take money going into that game. Houston had their streak. They had their 8-game winning streak or whatever it was. But I could find fault in that winning streak because of the teams they played. They played a lot of teams with a lot of injuries, injured quarterbacks, and that kind of thing. So Indy was the team. Going into the game last week, I don't think you can make a case that Houston was the better team, which even if you say Houston's an equal team, that would be the 3. I never saw it. I always thought that Indy was the better team. Never thought it'd get to the point where Indy was favored. What I did was I teased Indy last week because I didn't get the full 3, but I took it over 7, made it to 8, I believe. But that was just a bad line. I'm not sure this was a bad line. Like you said, the 4 wasn't there long, so I don't even worry about it. But if you like Kansas City, I would have to think that you got to get in now. There's going to be a lot of Indy backers, but Kansas City playing at home, I think there's going to be a lot of big money once they open up Thursday with the higher limits. People who do their own power innings will have Kansas City as a play at under 6.
Yeah, and for Kansas City here, certainly taking some sharp money early in the week. We did see that point of resistance at 6, but, keep in mind here, yeah, Indianapolis is a pretty public team with how well they've been playing, 10 of their last 11, Andrew Luck, but Kansas City with Pat Mahomes, sexy offenses get public money as well. So, the public may be a little bit more split on this game than it was last week with Indianapolis, pretty much taking one-side action all the way up until game day when some people just said, you know what, everyone's on Indianapolis. Maybe I'll give Houston a try. That certainly didn't work out. How about the late game on Saturday here? Dallas and the Rams. Rams, 7-point favorite. A lot of extra juice out there, minus $1.15. My bookie, the only one I'm seeing offshore right now, dealing 7 flat on this game, minus 110. You mentioned that you think the Rams could be a little bit vulnerable this week?
Well, I think out of the 4 teams, they could be vulnerable because they haven't played well. And I do want to make a point on something before I get to this game. Another thing about the teams being 14-1 or whatever for the underdogs, all the teams that are underdogs are on a nice spread of winning streak right now. Indy, as you said, has been killing it. Dallas has played a lot better ball lately. The Chargers have been a nice money maker, and obviously Philadelphia has surprised some people. But all the home teams, Kansas City hasn't performed well the second half of the season against the spread. The Rams have been weak against the spread all season long. New England hasn't been their normal moneymaker, or New Orleans started the year well, but have not played up to capabilities lately. So if you're a guy who has made money or lost money lately and tends to continue to play on that team, you're going to find more money coming in on these underdogs here. But, the thing that concerns me with Dallas is I don't believe they're very good at throwing the ball down the field. And the Rams have a tremendous pass rush, which means Dallas is going to have to throw the short passes to the running back, which is what you're supposed to do. And they're going to have to run the football, and Ezekiel Elliott is a great runner. But it's going to make Dallas, anytime they're on offense, it's going to take them a long time to get down the field and score. You're not going to have too many explosive plays out of Dallas, whereas the Rams have that explosive play capability. Ever since Cooper Kupp's been injured, they have not had the same capability. I don't know if that's Cooper Kupp's a good player. He's not a great player, so I don't know if that's just happened to be the way that it worked out. But, the Rams playing at home, I like the Rams. I actually used them as a teaser earlier, so they basically just have to win. But Dallas is a team. Anytime you got a team that can run the football and keep the opponent off the field, I think you've got a chance in these games, and Dallas has that ability. I still like the Rams. I don't want to lay the 7 with the Rams. I don't trust them to lay the 7, but I do feel they'll win the game. But this is the one game where I somewhat lean with the dog.
Well, of course, you mentioned Dallas, a pretty proficient rushing attack. Rams 32nd in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, so that certainly doesn't help, especially when you're looking to cover a big 7-point number here. There is a big coaching mismatch in this game, once again for Dallas. There was a coaching mismatch last week, and then Brian Schottenheimer really kind of neutralized that for Seattle. Much bigger coaching mismatch here with Sean McVay and the coaching staff that he has. So we'll see if Dallas has the right scheme. And again, that's something that opens live betting up for this game. Look and see how Dallas looks. Look and see what the game plan is. And then you can decide from that point forward if they're going to have success or if the Rams are, going to just kind of lean on them a little bit until they fall.
Speaking of live betting, like Indy-Kansas City game would be a terrific game. Anytime you can get a game that can go both ways offensively, where a team will take a 10, 14-point lead, based how you think the game looks, you can get some pretty nice lines and catch yourself up with catching plus money on both sides. So that's a game I always like. Anytime there's a high-scoring game, your Baylor's, West Virginia games in college football, that kind of thing. We don't do enough talking about in-game betting. We did a video last week on it at Wager Talk, but there's so many different ways to make money. And you talked about missing out on numbers. That's what a lot of guys do. They got a team and they didn't get the number they wanted. I was looking to play Clemson in that national championship, but I thought Alabama, which had a habit of scoring first, would cut down the score, and then I could get a better number on Clemson. Well, Clemson picks that game off, and all of a sudden they're up 7-0. I never got that chance to bet into Clemson, but the worst thing that happens is you walk away and you don't have a bet. And but live betting is really for these games that everybody has the ability to play a live betting, and there's a lot of different odds from different sports books. It's definitely the way to go.
All right, let's go to Sunday afternoon here, or Sunday morning, as it were, for the Los Angeles Chargers. Second straight game cross-country, second straight early kickoff on Sunday for them. Third straight road game they played in Denver in Week 17. So obviously a lot of things from a spot standpoint going against the Los Angeles Chargers here. And yet this number has gone down from 5 or 4.5 to 4. What do you make of that, Brian?
Yeah, we're seeing 62% of the bets on the Chargers. The only way I could look to play this one would be New England because of the spot, as you pointed out. The weather doesn't look to be quite as bad as it was earlier in the week. They were talking snow. I don't think that's going to be a factor here. But, you talk about the coaching advantage. Well, you've got it right here again, as the Chargers made a lot of negative coaching moves late in games, and that's hurt them on the season. And you got the best coach, Hall of Fame coach in New England, who's been there before. Nobody's talking about New England right now, and I understand why the team hasn't played as well this year. Their key players have had injuries. They don't have the big-name players. Well, New England's a team who always picks players off the scrap heap that nobody else wants, plugs them into the system, and they could do what New England wants them to do. And you're looking at a 4 here, and I already talked about having a buy, the value of a buy. Let's just say 2 points, just round it up for 2 points. New England, with all the success that they've had in the playoffs and at this time of the year, you'd have to give them at least 2.5, which would be 4.5 points there. And then you add in the Chargers, the way they've got to travel back and forth, and yet you're laying less than that number. You're not charging them anything, as a little pun, or no pun intended there, on the travel situation. So, in reality, this line should probably be 5.5, and now we're getting it at 4. The only way I could look here would be New England. Obviously, we've seen the stats on Brady against the San Diego quarterback, and Brady's dominated. I happen to think this Chargers team is better than some of the others, and New England's team isn't quite as good. But still, New England is the biggest moneymaker in the NFL day in and day out. They're the most public team, and yet they continue to make money for their backers. You're going to have to force me to play the Chargers in this game because I've seen this too many times out of New England.
Yeah, I mean, if this goes down to 3.5, I'll take a pregame position. If it doesn't, I'll kind of wait this one out, maybe take New England's second half or something like that. Because for the Chargers, I mean, there has to be fatigue here at some point. There just has to be. Talking about 3 straight road games, 1 in altitude, 2 cross-country trips. Phillip Rivers isn't a spring chicken by any means. They've had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball this year. Somebody's got to be getting tired on this team. It just has to be happening. And I kind of wonder about the fourth quarter for the Chargers against Baltimore there. I know they went into the prevent defense, but, was that fatigue? Was that managing yourself, knowing that you have to play again on the road the next week? Was that a sign of something to come? I'm not sure. Obviously I'd like to think that it was just because of the scheme and because, they had the game well in hand that they were giving up big chunks of yards. But I kind of wonder if, maybe there is a little bit of fatigue creeping in there. And you've got to think somebody as smart as Bill Belichick, they're going to go with a little bit more tempo in this game. They're going to do a lot of things to try and stretch the Chargers out sideline to sideline with Sony Michel and with throwing the football. I feel like I'm going to have New England in the second half of this game if everything sets up well. And I may end up talking myself into a pregame position as well.
Well, New England's always deferred when they win the coin toss. So the Chargers, if it works out that way, the Chargers get the ball first. Maybe the Chargers get a score on that first drive, they get a touchdown, and all of a sudden we can get New England less than 3 in the game. That would be something that I definitely look for.
All right, one more game to talk about here in the divisional round. Philadelphia and New Orleans, Eagles versus Saints. Saints an 8-point favorite here in this one. Total of 50 on this game. Brian, what do you think about this matchup?
I had Philadelphia as a free play last week. If I could have gotten the 7, it would have made my card. Didn't happen. Stuck with the 6.5. Bet it. Gave it out as a free play. And I liked the Philadelphia part all day long. You had a second-year quarterback in Chicago, rookie coach in Chicago, and you had a Philadelphia team that had gone to the Super Bowl the previous year, a lot of veterans. I thought that was a team in Philadelphia that was underrated, Chicago being a little bit overrated, and it worked out well. I didn't expect Philadelphia to win the game outright, but that sets us up pretty well here because now we're seeing 63% of the bets on Philadelphia. People started to buy into Philadelphia and Nick Foles. And granted, I give Nick Foles all the credit in the world. It's a nice story. A lot of times coming into the playoffs here, you get a lot of narratives. One of them is Indianapolis. One of them is the LA Chargers. I knew I was going to say it. But another one is Philadelphia here. And you're getting a team that pulled off the upset on the road last week in a cold weather city, just like Philadelphia. Now they have to travel, and they have to face New Orleans in a dome, a fast track in a dome. Philadelphia, we all know the injuries they have in the defensive backfield, and New Orleans has the team that throws the ball and has more success throwing the ball downfield than anybody in the NFL. They in Kansas City. And Drew Brees at home in that game. We've seen anytime New Orleans is at home in a Monday Night Football game, a primetime game, you get a huge home field advantage. And I really like New Orleans here with the extra time to prepare. The coach has been very good off of buys and with extra time to prepare in the past. Philadelphia was the team I was on last week, and sometimes you've got to realize that maybe you were a little bit lucky in that situation. I'll take the win and I'll walk away, and I'll play the Saints on this one. Is you're getting the team with the extra rest, with the bye week, and I think that's very important because of where they're playing. The Saints, it's going to be tough for anybody to beat the Saints. The Rams do have that ability because of their fast-paced offense to try to match the points with the Saints. But other than that, the Saints are the team to beat, and obviously the line tells you that.
Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at WagerTalk.com. What's going on over there right now, Bryan?
Back to videos today. Showtime will actually be in on our videos today. Kelly Vegas is there, and anytime you get a good-looking woman who knows a little bit about sports, they want to know about it, and Kelly's taking part in a sports handicapping or a sports. I'll take a look at sports betting in Las Vegas. Showtime is putting. I don't know if it's just a one-time thing or if it's a series at all, but they'll be there today. So looking forward to actually maybe dressing up a little bit. But my dressing up is just wearing a clean shirt, so we'll have to see how it goes.
Well, you can follow Bryan's work on Twitter at BLeonardSports and over at WagerTalk.com. Bryan, appreciate the time as always, sir. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds great. Everybody have a great weekend.